So we are going to talk about what is a computer. This is a very basic video which will help you understand how basically a computer works. So a computer has is a combination of four things. First is an input device, second is an output device, something called memory and storage, and then you have processing. So these four items combined make a computer. So you can have, if we are talking about like a desktop PC, so you would have things segregated out. So like input could be your keyboard and mouse, your output is your screen, and then your CPU that would have the storage within that CPU and a processing power, which would be your processor. So these four things combined along with other things to make them run together is called a computer. Let's understand what these devices are or how they look like and how exactly computer works together. So the first thing is that is an input device. You need a device to pass on some instructions to the computer so that it can do the desired processing for you. So what these devices are, so these could be a keyboard, this could be a mouse, this could be a scanner, a digital camera, a joystick, microphones, everything using which you can send information into the computer is an input device where you can get some information from that device. So that is called an input device. Moving on to the next one, which is an output device. So an output device is anything where you can get the output after the processor has done the processing. So it could be like a screen, a printer, a speaker, anything where you get the output into a human readable form. In simple terms, so anything where you as a human can read that output is called an output device. Then we talk about memory. A memory is something where you store some information in computer. It's called computer storage or computer memory. There are a couple of types of memories. So first is random access memory, which is also known as RAM. You would have seen especially in your laptops and these days when you buy your smartphones, all of them say that it has X GB of RAM and X GB stroke TB of storage space. You would hear in day-to-day life, but let's understand the definition of RAM and why it is needed in any sort of computing devices. A RAM is called random access memory. It is part of your computer that uses while the computer is powered on. So RAM is a kind of memory which stores information only while your device is powered on. So the moment you switch off your device, your RAM is completely wiped out. So it becomes completely clear. So there's no data saved in RAM. So RAM is a very powerful and very fast processing memory section, and hence RAMs are expensive, whilst the standard storage device, which could be your hard disk, and these days it could be a solid state drive. So these are a bigger chunk and they are slower in processing, and hence they are comparatively cheaper to a RAM that you would buy. That's why these are two separate things. So RAM is kind of your thinking brain. So where RAM lets you think. The more random access memory you have, the more RAM you have, the more thinking power you have, and the more complex programs and more heavy operations you can do if you have a higher RAM in your device. Let's talk about the next set of memory, which is called ROM. So ROM is a read-only memory space. So it stores the instruction which is generally required to start the computer. It is also known as BIOS. So especially if you use or if you have seen a Windows computer. So in Windows computer, if you keep pressing F9 for a longer period of time, you enter into the BIOS information. So that information, that all of that setup and screen that you see is stored in read-only memory. Read-only memory just stores the information to boot the computer. It helps, it's the first space when you power on the computer. This is where the CPU goes and reads the instructions and then starts booting up your device. So that's why your ROM is needed. ROM is also used in a lot of other devices, like you could have it in your printers because they just do a specific action and you can't reprogram them. So devices like that, even these days, like your washing machines, they are also very smart these days, so all of them would have some ROM memory in them, which would do all the digital actions which you would like to process on those devices. Then we have the storage space. Storage space basically refers to the long-term storage. Conventionally, it used to be the hard disk drive, which is slowly and gradually getting replaced with the SSD, which is the solid state drive. So this is where in your computer you would store data permanently. You could have an external hard disk connected to your device, or you could have a device sitting inside your computer, which would be the hard disk or the solid state drive. So this is called the permanent storage, where you could store the data and it stays like forever unless you delete it. It stays in that hard drive, and you can, no matter how many times you switch off or switch on your device, it will still stay there and you can go and access it and read it. So that is called your storage device. So whenever you want to read anything, let's say you have created a document or a photo you have stored in your hard drive, and now you want to see that photo on your screen. So what will happen is the processor will go into the hard drive, it will go and pick up that image, bring it up in the RAM, and that's when you will start seeing it on your screen. Sometimes when you double click on any icon, it takes some time to load up. So that's the time when all that information is getting processed and coming into your RAM so that it can be pulled up on the screen. So that's what basically is the difference between the storage and your RAM, which is your random access memory. All of these things are combined together. This basically makes a computer. The reason why I have included this particular topic in my series of videos is because it is very important for you to understand how a computer works. Generally when we study computer programming in school and colleges, this is the building block which is taught to us. And it is very important for you to understand the difference between the hard disk or the long-term storage and RAM, because any code that you would write, and when that code would be stored, saved in your long-term storage, but when your code will start processing, it will load up into RAM. So you need to be conscious of how much RAM your code is taking up. And there are a lot more things which we'll understand once we reach to that stage. So it's very important to understand the difference between RAM and the long-term storage, which could be your hard disk or your solid state drive in the latest devices. So coming to the next bit of this, so after memory, there is the next bit, which is processing. So processing is basically your processor, where like we say that this is generation 5, generation 7 processor. So processor is kind of your brain where all the processing happens. So like input is given and the operation that you have asked them to do, that happens, and then the output is generated. So all of this happens in the processor, and that's why it is called the processing unit. It is also known as central processing unit, which is also known as CPU. Yeah, this CPU is different to the CPU which you would find in your old desktop, and where it's the whole box is called CPU, but that's just a generic name given to that. But central processing unit is within the motherboard. It's a combination of a couple of things. That's called central processing unit, which includes processor and few more things attached to it. So after this, here's a quick screen images which show how do this combination works together. So we have the input, we have the CPU, which is the processing, and the output. The storage is also connected to the CPU to does the processing. In generic terms, it would look something like this. We would have the keyboard and the mouse, and then the chips for processing. The output could be the screen or the printer, and the storage could be the hard drive or the USB drives. So this covers our setup for how computers are built and what lies inside the computer, inside that machine. How does the processing happens? The most important bit in this part is the memory and the difference between the RAM and your permanent memory, which is called the solid state drive and also known as the hard disk. That's very important for you to understand, and hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one. All the best. If you have any questions, you can join the QA session, which happens every Friday, and please drop in your comments, feedback, and any questions in the comment section, and I'll get back to you.